You're failing because you skip. One missed day becomes one missed year, and one missed year becomes a wasted life. You say you want success. You say you want freedom. But if I examine your calendar, your morning, your night, what do I find? Gaps, hesitation, abandonment, drift. If you had simply repeated the right thought, the right action, the right aim daily, you would already be free. But you didn't. You skipped. You delayed. You gave yourself permission to rest before you built the rhythm that creates rest. And now you're asking why nothing has changed. This is not a speech. This is a warning. Because if you skip this again, you will skip your future too. The universe does not reward the talented. It does not respond to the clever. It does not admire the inspired. It rewards the consistent. It moves not when you try, but when you repeat. You want life to obey you? Then return to your post. Return to your thought. Return to your discipline. All power belongs to the man who refuses to skip. And I mean daily. I mean without excuse. I mean when the feeling is gone. I mean when the room is empty. The man who returns to his purpose daily, even when tired, even when unseen, is the only man the law obeys. Not the man who sprints, not the man who starts 1,000 fires. The man who returns. Do you want results? Stop asking for motivation. Start practicing obedience. You're not tired. You're undisciplined. You're not stuck. You're inconsistent. You're not lost. You've just stopped showing up for the plan you wrote when you still believed in yourself. Some men try, other men train. Some men start, other men never stop. There are two kinds of men in this world: the one who skips when life gets hard, and the one who becomes harder than life itself. This is the speech for the second kind, or the one willing to become him. You want results, you want peace, you want power. Build the man who does not miss. That man begins here. Let me tell you a truth you've avoided. The results you want are already on the calendar. They are hidden in the repetition you were supposed to begin 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. The work was simple. The aim was clear. But you skipped. You skipped the day, the discipline, the declaration. And with each missed moment, you distanced yourself from the man you were called to become. Success is not mysterious. It is not hidden. It is not magic. It is simply the compound interest of consistency. But most men can't hold the pattern long enough to see it work. They plant a seed and dig it up the next day. They speak their aim and then speak fear 5 minutes later. They act for 1 week and then wait to feel motivated again. But law does not move by feeling. Law moves by obedience. And the man who obeys, even without emotion, builds power that the world must acknowledge. I do not care how good your plan is. If you abandon it every time you're tired, you are still ruled by weakness. I do not care how deep your desire is. If you only act when it's convenient, you're not building a future, you're building a fantasy. Consistency is not a personality trait. It is not a preference. It is not something some men are better at. It is a spiritual law. You obey it or you fail. You live inside of it or you fall beneath it. You want wealth? Then you must speak wealth daily. Move toward it daily. Affirm it daily. Build structure daily. Not when you feel like it. Not when the sun is out. Not when the motivation videos line up with your schedule. Daily. Without fail. Without apology. The man who becomes consistent becomes feared by his enemies, trusted by his allies, and watched by the world, because when a man no longer skips, he becomes inevitable. He becomes certain. He becomes a force. Let me tell you now, everything you want, discipline, wealth, confidence, clarity, dominion, all of it is behind the wall called consistency. And the only way to tear it down is not with force, but with repetition. 1 strike per day, same place, same time, until the wall falls. I will show you in this speech how to build consistency, not as a habit, but as a law of identity. How to become the man who no longer misses. How to train your mind to move whether it wants to or not. How to make success the default pattern of your life, not the lucky exception. But this will require war, not against others, but against your emotion, against your excuses, against your old self who still believes in breaks before obedience, the self who thinks skipping once isn't dangerous. It is. One break destroys a pattern. One skip kills momentum. One weak moment justifies the next 100. You must now become aggressive with yourself. You must become the enforcer of your own law. You must say, I do not skip, not as an intention, but as an identity. And every action, every thought, every routine must bow to that sentence. So say this now, not quietly, not hopefully, but as a vow. I obey consistency as law. I do not skip, I repeat until I arrive. Again, I obey consistency as law. I do not skip. I repeat until I arrive. These are your opening lines. Let them tattoo themselves onto your soul. Let them become the new gatekeeper of your habits. Let them end the chapter of the man who only moved when it was easy. The man you were is over. The man who does not miss begins now. Let us continue. Inconsistency is not weakness. It is not forgetfulness. It is not harmless. Inconsistency is spiritual self-betrayal. It is the quiet permission you give yourself to remain average while speaking of greatness. It is the delay of destiny in the disguise of rest. It is the choice to break the very structure you once promised would carry your life forward. A man does not destroy himself in a day. He destroys himself in moments, in skipped mornings, in casual delays, in postponed rituals, in whispered excuses, in the voice that says, just this once. And so the path that began with fire turns into smoke. The vision that once lit his mind now collects dust behind a screen of justification. Drifting never announces itself loudly. It does not kick down your door. It taps on your shoulder. It whispers, you've earned a break. It says, you can catch up later. And so, the man who once acted with precision starts to negotiate with the habits that made him strong. His calendar becomes cluttered. His voice loses its conviction. His mind forgets the clarity it once commanded. And all of it began with one skipped day. The man who skips once skips again. And each time he does, his identity rewrites itself. No longer the man who builds, now the man who bargains. No longer the man who finishes, now the man who starts often but completes nothing. No longer the man who walks with power, now the man who apologizes for who he used to be. Let me tell you this truth. The moment you skip what you once declared sacred, you have chosen drift over discipline. You have allowed comfort to overtake command. And unless that pattern is broken swiftly, it will harden into habit. And habits become identity, and identity becomes fate. The world is full of men who almost became great, men who had vision, skill, fire, but they could not hold a rhythm. They could not repeat. They could not wake up on time. They could not hold their tongue. They could not write their goal every morning. They could not say no to distraction. And so their life became one long excuse wrapped in emotion. A business does not collapse in a day. It collapses when its builder stops showing up every day. A body does not weaken in a week. It weakens when the man who once trained with urgency skips once, then twice, then always. A reputation is not ruined by one action. It is unraveled by the slow erosion of daily consistency. But I will tell you where the real tragedy lies. Not in what the man loses, but in who he could have become had he simply stayed the course. This is why consistency is not optional. It is law. The subconscious mind, which carries out every command you give it, does not respond to passion. It responds to repetition. It is not moved by how loudly you speak your goal once. It is trained only by how often you return to it, speak it, live it, even when no one claps and nothing moves. You may have the right plan, the right aim, the right mentors, but if you skip the process, the result will never arrive. The man who wins is not always the man who moves fastest. He is the man who never misses. I tell you now, it is better to do a small thing consistently than to do a great thing occasionally. It is better to show up daily than to dazzle once and disappear, because identity is not built by emotion. It is built by habit. And the habit of showing up, even when tired, even when unseen, even when tempted to justify rest, this is the difference between the man who builds and the man who dreams. Let me give you a warning. If you're telling yourself that missing one day isn't a problem, you've already begun to lose. Because the first missed day is not about results. It is about permission. It is about what you're teaching your mind to expect from you. And when your mind no longer takes you seriously, it stops building what you say. When you skip one day, you are not just delaying your goal. You are denying your identity. You are proving to yourself that your word is conditional. And the man who treats his word casually will never carry the weight of greatness. You must become violent with inconsistency. You must not excuse it. You must not justify it. You must not allow one weak moment to unravel a pattern that was destined to change your life. Because when a pattern breaks, power breaks with it. And if you want that power back, you must begin again, not where you left off, but from below, rebuilding what you once betrayed. But the good news is this: consistency can be rebuilt. Rhythm can be restored. The pattern can be restarted. And once the mind sees you return without apology, without negotiation, without weakness, it will begin again to obey you. Say this now: I show up regardless of mood. One day off is one day delayed. Again, I show up regardless of mood. One day off is one day delayed. These are not slogans. These are your new standards. Let them correct you. Let them wake you. Let them push you out of the bed when comfort says, sleep. Let them turn your hand back to the work when distraction says, scroll. Let them remind you that your future is not built in bursts, but in daily fire. You must now build the man who shows up, not as a suggestion, but as a law. You must no longer skip, not because it's difficult, but because it's unacceptable. You must treat your routine as sacred, your discipline as holy, your word as binding. And if you do, if you return to the action, the repetition, the structure, you will not need to wait long before results appear. Because consistency always wins, not sometimes, always. Because the law cannot deny the man who repeats truth long enough for truth to manifest. All power belongs to the repeater, not to the man who is clever for a moment, but to the man who returns to the same work, the same thought, the same pattern, day after day, until the world has no choice but to yield. It is not the man who starts 1,000 things who becomes great, but the man who repeats one thing until it submits to his will. Consistency is the discipline of kings. Repetition is the crown that separates the builder from the beggar. Repetition is how empires are built, identities are formed, fortunes are carved, and immortality is earned. The thoughts you repeat become your beliefs. The beliefs you repeat become your attitude. The attitude you carry daily becomes your action. And action, when repeated, becomes character, habit, power. You do not become strong by thinking of strength. You become strong by returning to resistance again and again, until the weight that once crushed you becomes the weight you carry with ease. You do not become wealthy by speaking of money. You become wealthy by showing up to your aim until money has no choice but to follow. Every man I have studied who reached the heights of greatness possessed one common trait. He repeated what others abandoned. He did not need new ideas every week. He did not seek constant novelty. He found the truth and repeated it, found the aim and held it, found the path and walked it until the stones remembered his footsteps. Thomas Edison did not invent the electric light with inspiration. He did not receive a flash of brilliance and walk away with a working bulb. He failed thousands of times, but he did not change his direction. He did not abandon the aim. He repeated, he tested, he refined, he kept showing up to the same question until it opened itself to him. And that is power. Persistence is repetition under resistance. It is the quality of a man who refuses to be denied. It is the inner fire that burns longer than frustration, longer than fatigue, longer than failure. You may be tempted to change course when results delay, but delay is not denial. Delay is the testing ground. It is where the world asks, will you repeat long enough to deserve what you've requested? Most men begin with excitement and fade into indifference. Most men act with intensity and vanish into excuses. But the man who returns, the man who comes back to the same work with the same belief and the same aim, that man becomes unbreakable. Let me be clear. Daily discipline is not exciting. It does not entertain. It does not give immediate reward. But it is undefeated. The man who trains daily becomes the master. The man who reads his purpose daily becomes the embodiment of it. The man who holds one aim longer than others hold their distractions. That man will not be denied. You say you want power? Then learn to repeat. Repeat the aim. Repeat the action. Repeat the discipline. Not until it's hard, until it's automatic. Not until it feels good, until it becomes part of you. Your body must know your work like a prayer. Your mind must know your goal like a hymn. Your spirit must rise at the sound of your schedule. Let me tell you something few understand. Repetition builds momentum, and momentum builds confidence. And when confidence becomes automatic, you become dangerous. Not because you are louder, but because you are steady. The loudest man in the room is often the most insecure, but the man who repeats his work without applause is the man who builds cathedrals. Say this now. I repeat my aim until the world obeys. I master by returning to the same place every day. Again, I repeat my aim until the world obeys. I master by returning to the same place every day. Let these sentences anchor your identity. Let them become your standard. Let them destroy the version of you who needed motivation before moving. Let them replace your craving for variety with your hunger for dominion. The difference between mastery and mediocrity is not ability, it is repetition. The man who repeats becomes the law. He becomes the reference point. He becomes the standard. People begin to measure themselves by him, not because he sought it, but because he earned it. Repetition is how the subconscious is programmed. It is how belief is formed. It is how thought becomes habit and habit becomes identity. You cannot skip the process. You cannot microwave mastery. You must return again and again until the man you're becoming no longer feels like someone else. Edison didn't invent because he was brilliant. He invented because he was loyal to the process. He stayed when others left. He returned when others quit. He repeated what others rushed. That is your standard now. Whatever your goal, whatever your craft, whatever your desire, write it down. Repeat it daily. Show up to it hourly. Return to it relentlessly. And do not waver. Do not skip. Do not question your direction every time a result delays. You are not here to chase inspiration. You are here to become the man who cannot be moved. You are here to become the repeater. The man who masters himself through repetition becomes unshakable. He builds faith through structure. He builds power through discipline. He builds greatness not through force, but through pattern. Do not ask if it's working. Ask if you are repeating. Do not ask when it will come. Ask how many more days of repetition are owed. Do not ask for shortcuts. Ask for strength to repeat longer than most men are willing to, because the secret is not hidden. The path is not lost. It is simply hard to repeat. And that is why most men fail. They don't finish because they don't return. But you are not most men. Repeat after me once more. I repeat my aim until the world obeys. I master by returning to the same place every day. Now continue. Return and keep returning until nothing can stand before the man who did not stop. Emotion is the great distractor. It is the seducer of the undisciplined, the excuse of the weak, the invisible enemy that convinces men to abandon the very path they once declared sacred. Emotion does not fight you with weapons. It whispers. It says, "Not today." It says, "You're not ready." It says, "You deserve to rest." And so the man who once walked with fire begins to drift, not because the path changed, but because his mood did. Emotion is not truth. Emotion is not law. Emotion is not destiny. Emotion is wind. And the man who allows wind to steer his ship will never reach shore. He will circle in patterns. He will advance in bursts and collapse in fatigue. He will inspire others, but never complete himself. Let me speak plainly. Success is not based on how you feel. It is built on what you repeat when you feel nothing at all. When you are tired, when you are flat, when you are angry, when the results are invisible, when no one is watching, that is where the real man is revealed. Not when conditions are perfect, but when emotion screams for escape, and the man says, "I do it anyway." A man does not rise because he feels like it. He rises because he is loyal to what he said he would do, regardless of what he feels in the moment. Feelings are not facts, and the man who worships emotion will betray principle every time it asks for discomfort. The man who waits for inspiration will lose to the man who repeats without it. The man who waits for clarity will lose to the man who moves with decision. The man who waits for peace will lose to the man who creates it through repetition. Emotion must be ruled, not followed, not obeyed, ruled. Abraham Lincoln did not become great because he felt strong. He became great because he moved forward in spite of feeling weak. He was tormented by depression. He was mocked, attacked, and doubted. But he rose every day and walked forward, not because it felt good, but because it was required. His decisions were based on principle, not emotion. And principle, repeated with consistency, produces greatness. Emotion, followed blindly, produces delay, regret, and loss. How many times have you spoken a goal in passion, only to abandon it when the fire cooled? How many times have you promised yourself change, only to trade it for comfort when the hour of action arrived? That is not because your goal was wrong. It's because your emotions were still in charge. You cannot be ruled by emotion and expect to build anything permanent. You cannot build a structure on moving sand. The man who builds must first fix his inner foundation, not on inspiration, but on repetition, on obedience, on law. This is why I tell you, replace the question, "Do I feel like it?" with, "Is this part of the law?" That is the only question that matters, because the law does not ask about your feelings. It does not pause when you are tired. It does not stop when you are frustrated. The law rewards only the man who returns to it. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. Discipline is freedom, because discipline silences emotion. Discipline overrides confusion. Discipline removes the option to quit. And once the option is gone, results become inevitable. Let me ask you this. Do you want to feel good, or do you want to be great? Because the man who serves his feelings may feel good for a moment, but the man who serves his purpose feels fulfilled for life. And the difference between the two is the ability to act regardless of feeling. Say it now. I act regardless of feeling. I serve my rhythm, not my emotion. Again, I act regardless of feeling. I serve my rhythm, not my emotion. These are not comfort phrases. They are commands. Speak them until your emotions submit. Speak them until your body moves without debate. Speak them until your inner courtroom falls silent, and law takes the gavel. You are not an emotional creature pretending to be disciplined. You are a disciplined being learning to ignore emotion. You are not a slave to waves. You are a builder on rock, and the rock is your routine. Your routine is holy. Your discipline is sacred. Your word is final. And every time you move when emotion tells you to rest, you are burning away weakness. You are killing the boy. You are forming the man. The man who wins is not the most talented. He is the one who removes emotion from the decision. He does not need to be in the mood. He does not need motivation. He needs only a reason, and once the reason is known, he moves. You have reason. You have aim. You have structure. So why are you waiting to feel right? You already are right. Now prove it by obeying your rhythm, by executing your command, by repeating your law. You will have days when you want to stop. That is natural. But you must learn to say, this feeling is temporary. My law is eternal. And then you move, and then you repeat, and then you finish. This is how identity is built. This is how kings are made. This is how the future is rewritten. Not in emotion, but in obedience to the higher voice. Say this again. I act regardless of feeling. I serve my rhythm, not my emotion. Let these words carry you when emotion would carry you away. Let them return you to discipline. Let them separate you from the world, because the world waits to feel good. You move because you are chosen. You are not here to follow the wind. You are here to build the wall. 1 brick per day, 1 act per command, 1 man rising, not because he feels like it, but because he decided to become someone who no longer asks permission from emotion. Let us continue. Structure is not restriction. Structure is not suffocation. Structure is spiritual alignment. It is the container that holds your power, the channel that directs your energy, the law that organizes your potential into performance. The man without structure may be free to roam, but he is not free to build. For you are not free until your life runs on structure built by law. Most men confuse chaos with freedom. They think that to flow with emotion, to follow impulse, to resist structure, is to live in liberty. But what they call freedom is drift. What they call spontaneity is self-destruction with charm. A river with no banks is not free. It is a flood. And the man with no rhythm is not powerful. He is a danger to himself. Structure is the decision to act before you feel like it. It is the tool by which you no longer trust your mood to determine your motion. It is the altar upon which emotion is sacrificed and obedience is crowned. When your day is structured, your spirit is not confined. It is guided, focused, empowered. Your aim is no longer at the mercy of distraction, for structure silences the noise. Your daily routine is not just a habit. It is a confession of what you serve. It is the liturgy of your belief system. It is the physical evidence of what you say matters most. You may declare purpose, but if your routine contradicts it, then you are not walking in purpose. You are pretending. Let me ask you directly. Does your morning obey your goal? Does your night reflect your values? Does your calendar serve your definite chief aim? Or is it a testimony of divided thought, scattered desire, and ungoverned emotion? You do not need more motivation. You need structure that is immune to mood, and that structure must be designed, defended, and obeyed until it becomes so natural that to skip it would feel like sin. This is how the greatest men I ever studied moved. Their days were not left to chance. Their lives were not improvised. They ran their hours like kingdoms. Their calendars were battlegrounds. Their routines were rituals. Andrew Carnegie, a man whose name is written in the foundations of steel, education, and industry, lived by structure. His days were divided into blocks. His meetings were timed, focused, and followed with military discipline. His goals were written, his team was trained, and his life moved like a machine of purpose. Not because he was rigid, but because he was aligned. He was not a prisoner of schedule. His schedule was a testimony of mastery. He did not fear chaos because he never invited it. He ruled his time, and because of that, time obeyed him. Now you must do the same. If you want to rule your life, you must first schedule your law. You must no longer drift through days waiting to see how you feel. You must no longer allow the urgent to overtake the important. You must build a daily success structure that turns your desire into evidence. Here is what I command you to build. 1. Wake at the same time every day. This is not negotiable. When you wake by design, you begin in dominion. When you wake by emotion, you begin in drift. The man who wakes late is already behind, not in schedule, but in spirit. 2. Repeat your aim aloud. Before the world speaks, you must speak. Before the voices come, you must declare your voice. Your definite chief aim must be spoken every morning, with emotion, with fire, with repetition, until your subconscious no longer allows you to forget who you are. 3rd, act on your plan daily, not weekly, not when you feel ready, every day, even if the action is small, even if the progress is invisible. Every day you act, you reinforce identity. Every day you move, you multiply belief. 4th, measure weekly progress. The man who builds must inspect, review what was done, audit your obedience, reward consistency, correct weakness. This is how vision becomes measurable and greatness becomes sustainable. These 4 laws, obeyed daily, will outproduce 10 years of inspiration. They will outlast every emotional storm. They will make you immune to confusion. Because when structure governs your life, you are no longer asking, what do I do next? You already know, and knowing is power. Say this now. I live by structure. I rise by design. My rhythm is my freedom. Again, I live by structure. I rise by design. My rhythm is my freedom. These affirmations are not just words. They are a weapon against drift. They are your refusal to live in confusion. They are your declaration that discipline is your daily prayer. Let others wander. Let others guess. Let others react. You will plan. You will build. You will rise, not through noise, but through rhythm. Because when your day is structured, your energy is focused. And when your energy is focused, your aim becomes lethal. Let me remind you, structure is not there to limit you. Structure exists to protect your momentum, to preserve your mind, to guard your power, to keep you from falling into the hands of lesser priorities. A man without structure becomes prey to the world's demands. He says yes to everything because he has no law of his own. But a man with structure becomes a gatekeeper. He says no with confidence. He says yes with precision, because his law is already written, and he serves it like a king serves his crown. Structure makes your purpose real. Without it, purpose is poetry. With it, purpose becomes policy. Routine becomes result, and repetition becomes royalty. Now go. Build your schedule like a fortress. Let your morning be sacred. Let your actions be assigned. Let your progress be measured. Let your life move, not in chaos, but in calculated fire. This is spiritual order. This is inner government. This is what separates those who wish from those who wield. There is a law working in your life right now. Whether you recognize it or not, whether you like it or not, whether you obey it or betray it, this law is still at work. It does not sleep. It does not pause. It does not care about your excuses. It is the law of compounding behavior, and it determines not what you feel, not what you say, but what you become. Every act you take is a seed. Every repetition is a drop of water. Every hour you spend in obedience to structure is another layer on the foundation of your future. But because most men cannot see what's growing, they stop. They quit. They look at the ground, see no fruit, and assume the law has failed, when in truth they have simply failed to understand how the law works. Results do not scream. They whisper. Growth does not arrive overnight. It accumulates in silence. 1 disciplined day feels like nothing. 2 feels like repetition. 10 feels like routine. But 100 disciplined days becomes fortune. 1 year of integrity becomes identity. 1 decade of structure becomes a name the world respects. But the man who skips will never see it. The tragedy of inconsistency is not only the lack of momentum, it is the destruction of compounding progress. When you skip one day, you are not just delaying results. You are breaking the rhythm that multiplies unseen. You are halting a law that was working in your favor until you broke your part of the agreement. Every skipped day is compound interest lost forever. Every missed repetition is momentum denied. Every time you tell yourself, it's only one day, you are not just lying, you are losing. This is how powerful compounding behavior is. A man who builds in silence for 1 year will see results others spend 10 years chasing, not because he moved faster, but because he moved without interruption. Let me give you an example. Henry Ford. Ford did not build an empire by doing everything at once. He did not seek spectacle. He did not chase perfection. He built a system, a simple, repeatable, scalable structure. Every man did one thing over and over again with precision. And the result? A vehicle empire, an industry, a revolution in manufacturing. It was not complexity. It was consistency. It was compounding behavior, daily, repeated, unbroken action, multiplied by time and discipline. Ford understood what most men never learn, that success is not found in what you do once. It is found in what you do again, and again, and again. The same message, the same motion, the same structure, until the repetition becomes rhythm and the rhythm becomes results. You must now understand this. Wealth, belief, leadership, these are not random explosions. They are built through invisible accumulations of daily integrity. No one becomes confident through a single victory. Confidence is built when the man shows up day after day, regardless of how he feels, and sees himself keep the promise he made to himself. That repetition, more than praise, more than applause, is what builds the inner pillar of power. Because when a man knows that he will do what he said every day, no matter how it feels, he becomes immune to doubt. It is the same with wealth. A fortune is not a windfall. It is a result of countless unseen actions done in rhythm. The investment, the return, the reinvestment, the patience, the vision to keep building while others quit. That is how wealth is born, not from talent, but from timing and repetition working together. And leadership, true leadership, is earned not through charisma, but through consistency. People do not follow the man who moves once. They follow the man who moves always. They follow the man who shows up when others make excuses. They follow the man who repeats the same law, the same standard, the same discipline, until even his enemies must respect the weight of his integrity. You do not need to do more. You need to stop breaking the pattern. You need to stop betraying the law. You need to stay with the thing long enough for compounding behavior to reward you. Because when it rewards richly. But it only rewards the man who stays. Let me speak to your impatience. You want to see the result. You want to know it's working. You want to measure the fruit before the seed has had time to root. But the law doesn't care about your timeline. It only cares about your obedience. It only responds to those who keep moving, keep acting, keep repeating, even when the harvest is still underground. That is where most men give up. They stop watering the seed that was growing. They quit before the return. And so they start again with a new plan, a new goal, a new dream, never realizing that the last one was almost ready. Say this now. Each day builds the next. My future is the sum of my repeated behavior. Again, each day builds the next. My future is the sum of my repeated behavior. These are not theories, they are commands. They are the language of the man who understands that his next level is not waiting in the sky. It is hiding in today's action. It is in this hour, in this discipline, in this repetition. You are not one breakthrough away from greatness. You are 1,000 repeated actions away. You are 1 year of structure away. You are one decision, made daily and never broken, from becoming the man your past could never have predicted. And that is the reward, not only the wealth, not only the results, but the man you become when you hold your rhythm, the power that lives in your bones when you stop skipping, The confidence that rises when you act consistently until the world cannot ignore you anymore. This is the secret. This is the law. This is the pattern. So from now on, you must move like a man who understands the value of one more disciplined day. You must act like a man who knows that today is not small. It is everything, because today becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes a pattern, and patterns become destiny. Let us continue. Failure is not permanent. It is not fatal. It is not the end. Failure is only final when you decide to stop. It only gains power when you give it permission to remain. A man does not fail because he tried and lost. He fails because he refused to return. Inconsistency is the oxygen of failure. Without it, failure suffocates. You may feel like you failed. You may have lost money, missed your mark, fallen behind. You may carry regrets. You may replay old decisions. But let me tell you now, none of it matters unless you stop. The moment you choose to rise, to return, to repeat the motion with more wisdom, failure loses its grip. Defeat only becomes power when it is met with consistent forward movement. Most men allow their failures to define their future, but the wise man allows his failures to refine it. He does not run from them. He does not pretend they didn't happen. He does something far more dangerous. He outlives them. Because consistency outlives every loss. It outlasts every disappointment. It stands above every wrong turn. It is the only proof that your past did not win. Think of Edwin C. Barnes, the man who dreamed of becoming Thomas Edison's business partner. He did not walk into Edison's office with credentials. He did not possess power, wealth, or experience. All he had was a definite chief aim and a commitment to never stop showing up. He began at the bottom. He swept floors. He waited. He repeated. He returned. He endured rejection and invisibility, but he did not skip. He did not question his purpose. He stayed near the vision. He walked in the building daily, and one day after others had left, he was given the opportunity he had declared from the start. He did not get lucky. He got consistent. Barnes did not become Edison's partner because he was the smartest man in the building. He became his partner because he was the last man in the building. He endured. He persisted. He returned while others excused themselves. Understand this. You can lose today and still win the war if you continue moving. The score at halftime doesn't matter. What matters is who finishes. What matters is who refuses to leave the field. What matters is the man who walks back to the work, back to the repetition, back to the purpose, no matter what yesterday looked like. Every failure is fertilizer for the man who keeps showing up. Every rejection makes his resolve stronger. Every delay stretches his belief. Every unanswered prayer adds weight to the answer that's still forming. Nothing is wasted for the man who refuses to quit. You say you failed? Good. That means you've started. That means you've entered the arena. That means you've stepped out of comfort and into consequence. But now you must go one step further. You must declare, I will not stop until the harvest is in my hands. The world cannot stop the man who refuses to stop himself. The failure cannot stay where the man keeps moving. And defeat cannot live where the pattern of success continues. 1 hour, one task, one day at a time. Let me say this clearly. You have not failed until you've stopped. And if you are still repeating, you are still rising. If you are still obeying the structure, if you are still acting on your aim, if you are still training your thought, you are still advancing, even if it feels slow, even if no one sees it, even if nothing is broken through yet. The results may delay, the people may doubt, the mind may wander, but the man who holds his pattern will rise, not by chance, but by law. Say this now, I do not stop, I do not skip, I repeat until I win. My consistency outlives every failure. Again, I do not stop, I do not skip, I repeat until I win. My consistency outlives every failure. Let these become the command to your subconscious. Let them override the voices of regret. Let them silence the memory of your past losses. You are not building from scratch. You are building from wisdom, from strength, from a deeper, refined version of who you were before. Most men fall and never return, but the few, the rare, the great, they fall and rise stronger, sharper, simpler, more dangerous. They do not try again. They return with fire. Because each time you return, you are no longer the same man. You come back wiser. You come back with better questions. You come back with better posture. And eventually your consistency will crush what once defeated you. You will walk past the places where you once stopped and say, I remember this fear. I remember this pain. But I do not live here anymore. That is victory, not the absence of failure, but the refusal to stay in it. Not the guarantee of easy wins, but the guarantee that you will not miss your calling because you quit too soon. Do not stop, even when the world is silent, even when the reward is far off, even when your strength is low, even when the emotion is gone, even when the failure feels fresh. Do not stop, because what comes after the moment you wanted to quit is always greater than what came before it. You are being shaped, forged, tempered by the fire you keep walking through. And one day, when the harvest arrives, the world will call you strong, but only you will know that it wasn't strength. It was repetition. It was rhythm. It was the quiet decision, I do not stop. Let us continue. Repetition is not just strategy. Repetition is not merely habit. Repetition is not mechanical routine for the sake of self-discipline alone. Repetition is divine obedience. It is the signature of every natural law, the echo of the Creator's intention, the sacred rhythm by which all of life sustains itself, grows, multiplies, and flourishes. You are not repeating just to stay productive. You are repeating because it is the way of power. It is the way of God. Look at the world, not with modern eyes, but with spiritual clarity. You will not see random acts. You will see cycles, patterns, rhythms, seasons, structure. The sun rises not once, but every morning. The tide obeys its timing. The seasons rotate in perfect precision. The heart beats. The lungs draw in and push out. The earth spins. The planets orbit. The universe moves in calculated obedience to a design that does not break. And that design is repetition. Scripture itself is repetition, not in vain, but in holy power. Truths repeated, phrases returned, patterns obeyed, so the mind is not entertained, but transformed. Line upon line, precept upon precept. Repetition is how the soul is trained. Repetition is how man is sanctified, strengthened, refined. The commandments are not suggestions. They are written law to be remembered daily, repeatedly, faithfully. Nature is not chaotic, it is consistent. And when man steps into that same rhythm, he becomes more than flesh. He becomes aligned with divine law. He becomes like God, not in name, but in function. He becomes a builder, a creator, a master of systems, a man who repeats with purpose and thus commands power. This is why your daily structure matters, why your repetition must become non-negotiable. Not just for productivity, not just for results, but for spiritual calibration. When you repeat what you have declared as law, you are not just training the subconscious, you are agreeing with heaven. You are saying, I submit to the Creator's pattern. I do not create chaos, I obey rhythm. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. These are not poetic lines, they are divine blueprints. They are the evidence that God does not reward the random, He rewards the consistent. And so must you. You want to be godlike? Then begin by obeying the same law. Work when it is time to work. Rest when it is time to rest. Speak your aim every morning. Act on it daily. Evaluate weekly. Correct monthly. Reap when the season demands it, and sow when no one claps. This is not merely success. This is worship through obedience. The men who rise and stay risen are not the loudest. They are not the most emotional. They are not the most naturally gifted. They are the most rhythmic. Their life beats like a drum. Their thoughts rotate like the heavens. Their actions mirror the same law every single day. They do not skip. They do not delay. They do not ask permission from feeling. They obey what they have declared. They repeat because they understand alignment. Because when you are in rhythm with divine law, resistance becomes your servant, not your master. Greatness is not noisy. It is not chaotic. It is not sporadic. Greatness is rhythmic. It is steady. It is disciplined. It is patient. It shows up like the tide, without fail, without fanfare, without apology. Look at the most powerful forces in the world. Gravity, time, breath. Do they move fast? Do they explode? Do they arrive in excitement? Number. They move rhythmically. And because they move in rhythm, they shape everything else. This is what you are becoming. You are no longer a man chasing emotion. You are a man obeying rhythm. You are no longer asking, how do I feel? You are declaring, what is the next step in the pattern I've built? And when you do this long enough, the world stops questioning you. The world begins to move around you because rhythm is magnetic. Rhythm is power. Rhythm is dominion. Say this now. I repeat because I obey divine order. I walk in rhythm and rhythm lifts me. Again. I repeat because I obey divine order. I walk in rhythm and rhythm lifts me. Let these affirmations replace every excuse. Let them burn away every old habit that told you inconsistency was harmless. Let them call you back to the sacred pattern of success. You are not building a schedule. You are building a covenant. You are not repeating for routine. You are repeating because repetition is what made the heavens. And if it was enough to design the universe, it is enough to rebuild your life. Return to your structure with reverence. Repeat your aim with fire. Move in cycles, not chaos. Build a day that becomes a week that becomes a life, not in flashes, but in rhythm. When others sleep, you rise. When others forget, you return. When others chase novelty, you bow to the same truth again and again until it yields, because you are not like them. You are becoming something higher, something holier, something permanent. You are no longer ruled by reaction. You are ruled by divine law. And that law says, repeat what you believe until you become what you say. You are either a man who skips or a man who never skips. There is no middle ground. There is no gray. There is no such thing as mostly disciplined. You are not what you try. You are not what you wish. You are what you do without missing. You are what you return to. You are what you repeat. You are your rhythm. And your rhythm becomes your reputation. Consistency is not a task. It is a man. It is not something you do. It is someone you become. The consistent man does not have to remind others of his goals because his presence says everything. His posture speaks before his mouth opens. He does not advertise. He does not convince. He does not perform. He shows up, and the room adjusts. You must now make a decision that will echo through every future you want to build. You will become the man who does not miss, not the man who plans, not the man who starts, not the man who inspires, but the man who does every single thing he said he would do, without delay, without excuse, without fail. This is your edge. This is your armor. This is your identity. The inconsistent man must shout. He must explain himself. He must apologize for why things didn't happen, for why he stopped, for why he drifted. His energy goes to managing the messes created by missed days, broken routines, and skipped commitments. His life is a negotiation with himself, with others, with time. No one trusts him, not because he's evil, but because he's unpredictable, and no one follows the unpredictable. But the man who never misses, he doesn't have to ask for trust. He becomes trust. When he speaks, people listen, not because of charisma, but because of proof, because his habits speak louder than anyone else's inspiration, because when others fell, he stayed. When others paused, he continued. When others changed their mind, he returned to his law. Let me say it plainly. No one believes the inconsistent. No one invests in them. No one gives them power. No one watches them closely, because they have taught the world not to pay attention. Their own record reveals the truth. But everyone follows the man who never misses, because rhythm breeds reverence. Repetition builds reliability. And in a world full of emotional chaos, the man who returns every day becomes the lighthouse. This must be you. You must speak less, show more. You must walk in silence and let your routine do the talking. You must become so loyal to your structure, so disciplined in your repetition, so devoted to your principles that even your enemies trust you to always show up. You do not need to convince anyone. You only need to show them who you are, daily. You only need to build so consistently that people begin to believe in your aim without ever reading your journal. The man who does not miss is rare, but that is why he rules. That is why his name endures. That is why his words weigh more. That is why his time is sacred. He lives by a code, and others feel it. Let me now teach you what that man looks like. He wakes on time, not because he feels like it, but because it is written. He repeats his aim, not to impress, but to impress it upon his soul. He acts daily, not for applause, but because motion is obedience to identity. He says no to nonsense, not because he is rude, but because every yes must match his mission. He does not explain himself. He proves himself through pattern. And he is not perfect, but he is present. He is not always loud, but he is always there. And that presence, built through thousands of invisible choices, makes him immovable. You do not build this man in a day. You build him in decision, in return, in consistency. You build him by choosing to never skip the thing you know must be done. You build him when you feel tired. You build him when no one claps. You build him when nothing moves. You build him when doubt is loud. You build him until the old you is unrecognizable and the new you is undeniable. Say this now. I am the man who repeats what others skip. I become unstoppable by doing what others abandon. Again, I am the man who repeats what others skip. I become unstoppable by doing what others abandon. Let these be the words you return to every day. You're tempted to make an excuse. Every morning you don't feel like moving. Every night your comfort whispers, tomorrow. These affirmations are your gatekeepers, your inner guards. They separate the you who speaks from the you who builds. This man, the one who never misses, he already lives inside you. He's not someone you have to create. He's someone you unleash. And you do that not through hype, not through noise, but through repetition. You are not here to be remembered for good ideas. You are here to be remembered for unbreakable discipline. You are here to become the one man in the room that everyone knows will show up when it matters. The man they can count on, not because you're loud, but because you are always there. So be that man. Be consistent. Be predictable in the places that matter. Be so reliable that even your enemies believe in your habits. Be so rhythmic that even heaven begins to honor your timing. Do not miss. Do not skip. Do not disappear. You are building something no one sees until one day it becomes everything they respect. You don't need a miracle. You don't need more motivation. You don't need to wait for another sign or hope for a new strategy. You need to stop skipping. The man you want to become is already possible. The life you want to live is already aligned with the laws of increase. The opportunity is already walking toward you. But the one thing you keep doing is the one thing that keeps pushing it all away. You keep skipping. One skipped day leads to a skipped pattern. A skipped pattern leads to broken identity. And broken identity leads to drift, delay, and defeat. You don't drift because you're weak. You drift because you were inconsistent. You didn't fail because you lacked talent. You failed because you lacked loyalty to your own rhythm. All throughout this journey, I have not given you theory. I have given you law. Repetition is not a tip. Structure is not a trick. Consistency is not convenience. These are not techniques for better productivity. They are spiritual alignment. They are divine obedience. They are how power is transferred from heaven into your hands. The man who rises is not the one who skips and recovers. It is the one who never leaves the path. It is the one who repeats the same aim, the same work, the same standard, the same structure until the world bows in submission. You may think you need to do more. No, you need to do what you said you'd do every day, without pause, without apology, without missing. You need to return to your routine as if it is sacred, because it is. It is the daily altar of your identity. If you obey the law of consistency, the law of wealth will obey you. If you repeat the truth, the world will repeat rewards. If you keep your rhythm, you will master time, money, power, and purpose. The riches others chase will begin to chase you, not because of your charm, but because of your structure. What separates the few who build empires from the millions who watch them is not luck. It is not genius. It is not connection. It is that they do not miss. They show up before results. They act when others rest. They move when others doubt. And they stay loyal to the laws they once wrote in silence, long after the emotion has faded. That is who you must now become. You must build a daily structure and treat it as holy. You must wake when you say you will. You must speak your aim aloud, no matter how you feel. You must take at least one action every day that serves your purpose. And you must measure your steps, not to punish yourself, but to prove you still walk the path. You must repeat your aim, not for others, but to train your subconscious that you no longer skip. You no longer entertain weak thoughts. You no longer allow missed days to blend into missed months. You no longer live by inspiration. You live by law. You must refuse to skip for any reason. Emotion is not a reason. Distraction is not a reason. Delay is not a reason. You must build your discipline so tightly that skipping becomes impossible, not because of shame, but because of identity. Because to skip would be to betray the man you've already decided to become. Let me speak this into you now. Make repetition your reputation. Let the world know you by one thing, not by how loud you are, not by how quickly you rise, but by the simple truth that you always show up. You always do the work. You always speak the truth. You always act in line with your structure. You do not miss. And in time, they will not ask if you can succeed. They will only ask when. In time, you will no longer need to remind yourself of your greatness because your rhythm will have built it. In time, you will no longer wonder if the future belongs to you because you will have earned it repeatedly, daily, without fail. Say this now. I show up. I do not skip. I rise by law. My greatness is built by daily obedience to truth. Again, I show up. I do not skip. I rise by law. My greatness is built by daily obedience to truth. Let these final affirmations seal everything that has come before. Let them declare the death of the man who skipped and the birth of the man who always returns. Let them end the era of broken rhythm and begin the reign of structure, of fire, of relentless repetition. You were never meant to be average, but average was always the result of inconsistency. Now that you are consistent, you will be dangerous. Your presence will carry weight. Your word will hold power. Your name will become instruction. Because when the world sees that you never skip, it will have no choice but to obey the law you walk in. So from this day forward, you will not start over again, because you will not stop again. You will return, and you will return again, until there is no difference between the work and the man, until repetition becomes identity, and identity becomes legacy. The man who does not skip has now arrived. Begin.